Right, tonight's session will mainly talk about taxes. Yeah, I know the deadline is in 2 months, but you blink once, April will be here. You blink twice, May will be here. Okay, so as much as possible, you want to file your taxes as soon as possible so that you won't receive any penalties. So we'll talk about what are the notable tax reliefs that you shouldn't miss out in order to reduce your total chargeable income and more in our weekly analysis. As usual, not financial or legal advice. So yeah, remember this date, 15th May 2024. This is the deadline or the final day for you to submit your taxes for the assessment year of 2023. So how do I know if I need to file for taxes? Well, if you earn an annual income of more than 34,000 ringgit or equivalent to 2,833 ringgit per month after EPF deductions, then you have to file income tax. Now, even if you don't qualify for any tax reliefs, as long as you earn above the threshold, you still have to file for tax. Okay, so take note about this. And another thing, when calculating your gross income, right, it's important to include all sources of income, except those that are exempted from tax. So notable things that are exempted from tax, yeah, these include interest earned from fixed deposits, yeah, tabung haji, ASB, ASM, interest earned from cash apps, yeah, all this you do not need to include it in your tax file when you file for your taxes. But generally, all sources of income, let's say from your employment, your bonuses, your side income, as well as your rental income, yeah, all of this needs to be included when you file your taxes. Okay, so the first notable relief, yeah, this one is automatic, 9,000 ringgit. As long as you complete and submit your tax form, you'll be eligible for 9,000 ringgit in tax reliefs. It's pretty simple. And next one, we won't go through every single one. We will just go through what are the notable ones that you should pay attention to. Okay, so G5, this is education reliefs. Okay, if you are pursuing further studies, okay, you're paying to for your degree, course of study in law, accounting, Islamic financing, technical, vocational, industrial, scientific, or technology, yeah, then you'll be eligible for 7,000 ringgit in tax reliefs. Yeah, if you're pursuing a master's, then any course of study is eligible, masters or doctors, okay, provided that these courses are in approved and recognized local institutions. Okay, and the third one, I think this isn't available for the assessment year of 2022. I'm pretty sure this is a new one. Deduction of up to 2,000 ringgit can be claimed on any courses. Yeah, so if you have went through any online courses or physical courses in 2023, you paid for any of those courses, yeah, those can be included in your tax release for the assessment year of 2023. Restricted up to 2,000 ringgit, and make sure it has to be an approved local institution. Okay, so moving on, this one is medical expenses G6, G7, G8. Now, this medical expenses are up to 10,000 ringgit does not only cover serious diseases for yourself, spouse, or child, as well as fertility treatment, right? They also include vaccination costs, yeah, for yourself, spouse, or child, but this one is restricted up to 1,000 ringgit. There is also a separate 1,000 ringgit for these three parts, yeah, complete medical examinations, COVID-19 detection tests, test kits, self, spouse, or child, and also mental health examinations. Yeah, this one you have to lump it together, up to 1,000 ringgit. And this one is a new one for the assessment year of 2023. You get an additional 4,000 ringgit of tax reliefs if you have a child, yeah, touch wood lah, if you have a child 18 years or below who is currently going through some learning disabilities, yeah, such as autism, ADHD, so on and so forth. Okay? So yeah, next, this lifestyle. Yeah, this one is very important because I'm sure in 2023, the majority of you would have spent on something that will definitely qualify for this tax relief over here. So make sure after this session, you go and check back your 2023 receipts, see if you have anything that is eligible for this relief or not, because the scope of this is very wide. Because expenses for the use of self, spouse, or children, okay, if you bought any books, journals, magazines, newspapers, other similar publications, as long as they are not banned reading materials, you can claim them. Now, these books does not only include physical books, you can also claim e-books. Okay, so if you read any novels or any science journals, any business journals, make sure you keep those receipts and you're eligible up to 2,500 ringgit in tax reliefs. Purchase of personal computers, smartphones, or tablets. Again, this one is for yourself, spouse, or child. As long as it is not for business use, you can claim it under this relief. And they did mention there is no personal, or specifically I can say they did not mention that they are personal watches or sports watches over here. So I don't think you can include sports watches in this relief. Purchase of sports equipment for sports activity defined under the Sports Development Act. Payment for gym memberships if you have any rental subscriptions for your gyms, or you play badminton very often, right? You buy a new racket, you buy a new shuttlecock. All these are sports equipment that can be claimed under this relief. But sports attire, this one is entirely different. Let's say you bought sports shoes as well as sports clothing. Yeah, this one is considered as sports attire, not sports equipment. Therefore, it is not eligible for this relief. And finally, payment of monthly bills for your internet subscription. This one has to be under your own name. And apart from that, G10, right, there is an additional relief for lifestyle, 500 ringgit. Again, for yourself, your spouse, or your children. This one is for sports equipment, like what I mentioned just now, your badminton racket, your basketballs, etc., footballs, right? Or any sports activity, right? Let's say you are a bit competitive, you play in badminton competitions, all this rental and entrance fees, right? It can be claimed under this relief. Okay, so this is the last but not least, this is the most notable one, life insurances and EPF. Yeah. I want to stress on this one because in the assessment year of 2023, they actually expanded the scope for voluntary EPF contributions. Yeah, you can see over here, life insurance premiums or contributions to EPF voluntary, up to 3,000 ringgit. And then there is also an additional 4,000 ringgit for voluntary or compulsory EPF contributions. So let's say in 2023, you contributed about, let's say, 10,000 ringgit in mandatory EPF contributions. And in this case, you can claim up to 4,000 ringgit. And on top of that, let's say you also voluntarily contributed another 4,000 ringgit. In this case, you'll be eligible for the entire 7,000 ringgit tax relief. Okay, so if you guys are unsure about this, we can always talk more about it during the Q&A session. So what about receipts? Yeah, make sure you store those receipts properly for at least 7 years. Because when the tax department come and when you're audited, if you don't provide sufficient evidence, yeah, then you might be in deep trouble. The penalties are steep, and in some rare cases, you might be imprisoned as well. Okay, so make sure you store them in both hard copy as well as soft copy. I like to store my receipts in a soft copy, print them, put it on Google Drive. Just make sure that I have the receipts for every single year, at least for 7 years. Right? So EPF or PRS first. Yeah, for those of you guys who are looking for additional avenues to reduce your total chargeable income, I know it's a bit too late for the assessment year of 2023 already, but let's talk about this year, right, 2024. As I said just now, the scope for EPF contributions has been expanded. So hopefully next year, they are very likely to implement this same, I would say, policy again. So as much as possible, you want to maximize your voluntary EPF contributions up to 3,000 ringgit, right? Because if you were to compare EPF or PRS, which one is better, EPF definitely takes the cake, yeah, because EPF average returns is about 5 to 6% every year. Meanwhile, PRS, yeah, we've talked about this quite extensively previously. It entirely depends on the fund provider. Okay, many PRS funds, they tend to underperform and they charge very high fees. At the end of the day, they do not keep track of inflation at all. Okay, so my take on this is that if there are no other avenues for you to reduce your total chargeable income and you have already fully contributed to EPF the first 3,000 ringgit already, then you can consider PRS. Right? So let's move on over to another topic. This one is about graduating. Yeah, graduating today is tough. It's completely different compared to graduating a decade ago. Just have a look at this chart over here. Yeah, fresh graduates these days, 65.6% of them. Okay, more than half of fresh graduates, okay, they have a starting pay of less than 2,000 ringgit in 2021. Yeah, and only 11 out of 100 fresh graduates, or 10.8%, they had a starting pay of more than 3,000 ringgit. This is actually quite alarming because if you take a look at the data back in 2010, wages, it hasn't really moved. It has stayed pretty much stagnant over here. And for these underpaid fresh graduates, right, these people who are paid below 2,000 ringgit per month, more than almost half of them, okay, not more than half, almost half of them, 48.5% of them, they are in high skilled jobs. So this is pretty much the era today. You have fresh grads, they go to a high skilled job and they are severely underpaid also. It's no surprises why some of the people these days they have to go for 2 to 3 different side hustles. And fresh graduates are also becoming increasingly overqualified for their jobs. Yeah, this data, all this data is from the Kazana Research Institute. You can see the gap widening over here from 2019 to 2021. The job matching has been increasingly becoming more and more unmatched. Okay, and the reasons for this, well, first of all, it's very difficult to find a job that utilizes the employee's full talents. Yeah, as a result, fresh graduates these days, they just accept whatever job there is in the market to avoid unemployment, regardless of whether it's a low or decent pay or not. Yeah, this is why we have such a big mismatch over here. Another more alarming thing, this one is shows a spike in low-paying graduates by their study fields from 2010 to 2021. So this includes health and welfare, agriculture and veterinary, as well as education. So let me break it down for you. In 2010, almost half of educators, they had a starting salary of less than 2,000 ringgit per month. But in 2021, sorry, not almost, 72% of educators, they have a salary of less than 2,000 ringgit per month. And we often perceive that education is like a stable job, right? It's an honorable job. But yeah, they are becoming increasingly underpaid. So the reasons for this, well, according to the Kazana Research Institute, there are several inefficiencies in utilizing public and private sector resources, the ineffective education system, which I'm sure you guys are well aware of, right? Uneven labor allocation, I'm also sure you guys are aware of this. Employers, they tend to not leverage on skilled Malaysians' capabilities. Yeah, as a result, Malaysians are often underpaid and even exploited, right? Yeah, but let's say if you are one of them, those unfortunate ones, if you feel that your current pay is not high enough, well, it's very easy for me to say, right? All these things, I'm sure many people have said this before. Look for a higher paying job, upskill yourself, invest, invest, invest. But I'll just say this, you should implement the progressive wage model on yourself. So what is the progressive wage model? Well, one of the primary reasons why we are seeing this stagnant wage growth over here is the lack of a progressive wage model in Malaysia. So in simple terms, progressive wage model rewards workers as they upskill themselves. Okay, you get paid more as you become more and more efficient at your work. So if the government or the employers, they don't implement this sort of policy, well, you can actually implement it on yourself, right? So first of all, take courses, upskill yourself, right? Learn Excel, learn PowerPoint, learn Word, master these few things, and you'll become indispensable to your employer. Yeah, that's the first thing. Next up, you can walk up to them and negotiate a better pay. Well, most of the time it won't work because the employers, they simply, most of the time, employers these days don't really care about employees, especially in MNCs. Well, in this case, you can just walk out the door, right? Look for a higher paying job. Okay, because this is what this guy has done. Yeah, this 45-year-old Malaysian, how he managed to save up 1 million ringgit in EPF. Well, one of the first reasons he mentioned is that he changed his job 8 times. 8 times. And each time, he makes sure that the salary is higher than the previous job. Okay, so there is really no two ways about it, and it's the reality these days. And I will say this, don't stay with your employer if you feel that they're exploiting you and they're underpaying you. It's better to just straight away look for a higher paying job. And who knows, you might get a better experience also. And you may be more successful than this guy. You may have saved up 1 million ringgit by the age of maybe 40 years old or whatnot. Okay, so a fun fact over here, if you have more than 1 million ringgit in EPF today, any additional balance above this 1 mil balance, you can withdraw anytime. It effectively becomes a much more effective version of ASB and ASM. Plus, if you have 1 mil, let's say EPF pays 5% per year, you receive 50,000 ringgit in dividends or about 4.3k every month. Yeah, it's more than enough to live in major cities today lah. Okay, so just felt that you guys should know about this. And yeah, that brings me to the end of my short and sweet presentation tonight. Hopefully you guys learned something. So meanwhile, shout out to all our patrons, our supporters. Really, none of this would be possible without your support. Andrew, Wendy, Edward, Alex, Cici, Iz, Urshad, Caveman, Balls, Calvin, Tommy, Jinkang, Adrian, JS, Wenyan, Dean, Duhan, Sufi, Faris, Alan, Jackson, Raizan, Hudson, G, Jeffrey, Lawrence, Lukman, Will, Jack, YC, Arif, and Christy, as well as all of our learner members. What do you think about the AIA PRS scheme? So personally, I don't invest in PRS, okay? I try to max out my EPF contributions every month, which is recently they added another 3K. So every month, 3,000 ringgit, you divide it by 12. So every month I try to contribute about 250 ringgit voluntarily to EPF just to reduce my total chargeable income. I don't purposely go and invest in EPF because I'm still young. My funds will be locked until 55. Okay, so it wouldn't make sense for me to lock the majority of my funds up. And also, it also wouldn't make sense to invest too early into PRS. Now, in terms of PRS, right, like I said just now, this one highly depends on what type of funds you choose. So in the AIA fund brochure itself, make sure you check the returns as well as the fees. Yeah, because at the end of the day, fees will largely impact your returns. Give you an example over here. Versa themselves, they also offer PRS. So this is their PRS growth fund. And you can see, right, their growth fund, despite being a growth fund, you expect it to grow like 10, 12, or even 15% every year. The 10-year annualized return is only 4.24%, you know. If we start to bring in inflation, about 2 to 3% every year, then every year your real return is only about 1.5 to 2%, which isn't much lah, yeah, for it being a growth fund. Okay, to add on to that, there is a variety of fees. There is the management fee, 1.8%, pretty standard. Trustee fee, 0.04%, also pretty standard. But then there's the annual PPA fee, right? 8 ringgit, which every year, if you contribute, except for the first year, if you contribute every year, they will charge you this annual fee. Okay, so that's PRS. Make sure you check whether there are any additional fees or not. Now, this is why EPF wins out on PRS, right? Because EPF, there are no strings attached. You can contribute anytime. There is no fees, there's no sales charges, right? And at the end of the day, the returns is much more stable and consistent compared to PRS. Plus, right now, you get an additional 3,000 ringgit in tax reliefs for voluntary contributions. So logically, you know, it would make much more sense to max out EPF first. Okay, so is it advisable to contribute to the maximum of 100K per year or as much as one can afford to EPF if you have the extra money to spare? This is also with the objective to hit the 1 million ringgit threshold in EPF as soon as possible. Wow, this one is, I would say it's case by case basis. If you are really a T2 or T1, you're way beyond the T20 bracket, and you got 100K to throw every year, right? Then I say go ahead, okay? Because once you reach the 1 million ringgit threshold, which I think another guy is asking me to explain over here, inclusive of your balances in account 1 and account 2, that means your total balance. If it exceeds 1 mil, you can withdraw any outstanding sum. It means any balance above 1 mil, you can withdraw it anytime. So let's say if you have 2 million in your EPF account today, 1 million is effectively a flexible fund that you can withdraw anytime. Okay, provided that you must have a minimum of 1 million inside EPF. Yeah, hopefully that clarifies some of the questions over here. My mandatory EPF contribution already exceeded 4K. Yeah, this is pretty much expected. So as long as your salary is like at 2.5K to 3K, your mandatory contributions to EPF will definitely exceed 4K every year. So this one, you definitely will have to fill it out when you file your taxes for the assessment year of 2023, right? So moving on to your question, if I contribute more voluntary, can I claim those for tax relief? Yes, right? So the first 4,000 you already claimed, that one already maxed out, right? Apart from that, there is an additional 3,000 ringgit for specifically for voluntary contributions. Okay, so again, let's say you contributed mandatory contributions already exceeded 4K in 2023. In this case, you max out the first 4K. And then on top of that, you also voluntarily contributed maybe another 5K. Yeah, in this case, you can claim up to 3,000 ringgit in tax reliefs. So this is why I'm just going to hammer it back again. It's so attractive to voluntarily contribute to EPF right now, and I've been doing it last year Every month I try to contribute about 200 to 250 ringgit. So if you multiply by 12, that ngam adds up to about 3,000 ringgit, okay, which you can claim this tax relief over here. Okay. So yeah, if there are no more questions, thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the session, and I will see you guys in the next session, next Sunday, 10 p.m. Right. Good night, guys. Bye. Stay safe.